times as strong. No big deal. It wasn't even hard for me either. Remember when you had to like fight those asteroids and nearly die to become a Super Saiyan? Wasn't really a big deal for me.
The greatest thing though is that he never brags though. He's always gentle and kind-hearted the way he brags.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So Phil Fish just doesn't have a Twitter anymore? It's just gone?
Yeah, he deleted it.
God damn it. I wanted to tweet this at him.
Yeah.
This was my last chance to become friends with Phil Fish.
Have I checked out any other anime or manga? There are very few animes that I actually like. Cowboy Bebop, I think is a great... You know what? Cowboy Bebop, I will say, is a great show. Not even a great anime, not even a great science fiction show. It's just a great show.
It's really interesting to hear you say it, too, because it just sounds like you're a pinball machine for a second. Cowboy Bebop! Cowboy Bebop!
Cowboy Bebop! Cowboy Bebop! I really like Cowboy Bebop! It's a good show. And...
There really is no Phil Fish here. This is so sad.
The Vegeta sounded good. I've watched every episode of Dragon Ball Z several times, so... You know.
Cowboy Bebop.
Cowboy Bebop. Check out Cromartie High. Oh, I watched actually a little bit of Space Dandy. It's really good too. Yeah, I watched some of that. That was actually really fun. I'd watch more of that. It's like the Adult Swim website is kind of hard to navigate, to be honest. Cromartie High. 2 people are saying Cromartie High. My recommendation to check out an anime called Hajime no Ippo.
Oh, I watched that. It's a boxing anime, and it's real good.
Is it?
Yeah, it's basically Rocky, but with a little kid.
Ha! Okay.
You'd like
That's
it.
fine. The thing that I really dislike about anime is that they really, really, really embrace their cliches.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them. And that's why... And the ones that I like usually are the ones that don't embrace the cliches, which is funny to say because I love Dragon Ball Z and like that one, you know. But still. Freddie Mercury is a character in that? Okay, that's cool. Yeah, Goku just literally thought about his friend dying and became a Super Saiyan, pretty much. Spoilers. I saw, I actually watched Attack on Titan.
Yeah, show's pretty good.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was
Actually,
alright.
did a little bit to circumvent the usual shit that anime tends to fall into, and I'm not going to spoil things, but there were framing things that they did to try and make this a little bit surprising, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I liked Attack on Titan mostly. At one point, it kind of got more cliched and tropish a bit, where like the characters would be like, "I gotta follow my dreams and believe, and if I believe in myself, then I'll be." And it's like, ugh. God,
no, but don't you see how they kind of framed that particular moment, and it almost
killed the fucking narrative, like the whole thing. Yeah, sorry, go on.
It seemed a little bit like the way they framed that, like they were actually poking fun at themselves in a satirical kind of way.
Maybe,
and I can't describe why without actually spoiling the show.
All right, yeah, no, I kind of see what you're saying too. But then at the end of the day, he still ends up actually believing in himself and then becoming
right. But they like
or something.
Fucked him up.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they really did. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but mostly, it's mostly good. What I love about anime is that it takes fantasy, and then it's just like, okay, fantasy for some reason in Western stuff is always kind of situated in reality, where fantasy in like anime is like, hey, yeah, there are humans here sometimes, but then we're just gonna make up some like crazy ass shit that's like totally out there and make an entire series on that premise. And it's not just like a one-off episode or something. It's like the whole thing. And I could appreciate that. But at the same time, I also just really don't like the cliches.
It's amazing that they actually put so much time and effort into such specific concepts. Like, they'll make a whole anime about, like, this girl that really likes to specifically put cherries on top of cupcakes. And, like, that's her thing. Like, that's her jam. She will talk about this 24/7, and the entire show will somehow be about that concept. And they'll pull it off.
Yeah, they will do that. They will make the entire show about that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Fist of the North Star is metal. Like that show is metal as fuck.
Oh,
I actually like
watched
those gore animes that are just like, hey, there's kind of a story, but not really.
Dude, watch
Like,
Gantz. Gantz is the greatest.
is that really gory?
Gantz is one of the goriest and also one of the best.
Yeah. You know what I really liked, actually, and this is another one that's just kind of like, this doesn't even make sense, Rob, considering all the other things that you just told me, but the original show The Guyver, that I don't think was even very popular.
Oh, I've heard of that.
I fucking love that show. It's
I like
only
Lupin
13
the
episodes.
Third, man. That shit's old as hell, but it's real good.
I don't think I've seen that. Yeah, someone said you'd like Gantz a lot, actually.
That I'd like Gantz? Oh, that you would.
Yeah, that I would, yeah. Berserker's real good. Yeah, I don't know, like, I've just been soiled on so many animes that it's very difficult for me to buy in and try a new one.
Yuri is a good anime. You should watch Yuri.
What is that?
Yuri is lady on lady hentai.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It's a great anime.
Kenshin.
I'm a fan.
Samurai. I guess it's just called Rurouni Kenshin, isn't it?
Yeah,
watched
I've
some of that
watched
stuff.
that. It's alright.
That's all right. It's there are cool moments, but again, it kind of falls into that like super cliched thing happening all the time, and it just, for me, it just like totally takes me out of the experience. And granted, it's partly because it's dubbed over, and you know, not a lot of things actually translate well. And the other thing is, for me, most of the time, humor just doesn't translate. It just doesn't translate from Japanese into American humor. Now, that could be one translation. That could be cultural differences, because I generally don't like watching Spanish sitcoms because I don't really like Spanish humor that much. And I mean like Latin American, or not Latin American, but like, you know, the South American type of humor stuff. It's a lot of slapstick. It's a lot of really big stuff, and I'm not that into it. So it could be cultural. And the other thing is, like, the only thing that really does translate well between American, or like when you translate from Japanese into English, is like you can't get wit translated properly unless you completely rewrite jokes, and then you're not really being true to the original source material.
Yeah.
Or the only thing that really does translate well is slapstick, and you know, it's kind of, slapstick is just kind of, yeah, it's funny, but it's also shallow.
I was ignorant when I said before that Yuri is just hentai. It's also apparently a series of anime about focusing on lesbian relationships. I didn't know that, actually, so my bad. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Didn't
My
know
experience with it has always just been that it's hentai, so yeah, that's my own fault. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's part of it, probably Prisoner Number 6. Like, yeah, I probably don't, I'm not, like, there are cultural differences humor-wise, and that's totally a thing, and you know, it doesn't translate for me. Yeah. That's why you can't get into Space Dandy. I actually think Space Dandy's pretty funny. I watched some of that, and I thought it was pretty funny. I thought that translated pretty well. But again, I understand. Like, I'm totally on that front. Cheesy Saturday morning Western jokes. Samurai Champloo. Yeah, I actually did watch Samurai Champloo. I didn't like it as much as Cowboy Bebop, but it was cool.
Have I seen
was alright.
Basilisk? No, I haven't seen Basilisk. There's I almost said a lot of hentai. There's that too, but there's almost like an infinite amount of anime, and I'm surprised sometimes how many I've actually seen now, because it's not like I've gone through some concerted effort to watch tons of them, but it's just sort of happened over the years. But there's also a lot that I've missed too, so you might also like Fullmetal Alchemist, that's true, and there's 2 versions of it that you get to pick from which one you like better. So you get to watch
really?
they did the whole series twice.
Why?
Because the second one was closer to the manga, as far as I'm aware. They wanted to tell the story more correctly, and also I think they changed the art style a little bit. It's rare that you get to see a series just redone completely from scratch, and that one didn't.
Yeah, people have told me about that one too, like that I should watch it, that I'd like it, but I don't know. Again, like I said, I've been so soiled on animes that I just kind of, it's hard for me to dive in. The only reason I even watched Attack on Titan is because I ran out of shows at that point, and I had nothing to do, and I was like, Well, everybody keeps talking about, like, that's the new hotness, right? Like, everybody was talking about Attack on Titan for months, and I was like, all right, I'll watch it. And like I said, I liked it.
People were the same way about Fullmetal Alchemist too, though. Like, it had just as much hype.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just you don't hear about it anymore because it's old now. But yeah, you would totally get into it in probably 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah, maybe I would.
So it's about a kid that, like, learns how to do alchemy and, like,
Right.
for reasons that I don't want to spoil, like, has to. And then he goes on, like, a Pokemon-esque journey for a reason that I can't spoil. And it's exciting, and there's a lot of characters that are very interesting, and it goes into some, like, interesting ethical dilemmas, of course. And there are moments that will make you cry and moments that will make you laugh, and that's, you know, the mark of a good story.
Yeah, true. Did I watch Death Note? No.
Is Nick playing Fez with his webcam on full screen? I'm actually not. I opened the game up, and then I realized it was one of those games that's a pain in the ass to properly stream, and then I just closed it again. So, yeah, there's no gameplay on my stream right now. Just my camera.
Gurren Lagann, yeah, I've heard that.
I really have trouble with dubs. I'd prefer to just read them. I mean, I'm not, like, an elitist about it. There have probably been some great ones, but I just mostly don't bother.
Yeah. That's fair. It can get real corny. The Attack on Titan intro is awesome. Okay, yeah, I can get behind that. Although, didn't they change it, like, halfway through the season? I will say, the thing about the Attack on Titan dub that I watched on Netflix, it was awful. And I don't even mean that in that, like, they did things, like, it wasn't translated well. I mean, like, halfway through the season, they just changed the names of things and characters. Right. And it was like, alright, okay, is this a new thing, or like they haven't explained it? I guess it's just a new, like the thing that they use, the
pulley device thing.
Yeah. Okay, so that they at one point they called it the 3D dimensional device or something, and then like halfway through the season they just changed it to like the omnidirectional movement machine or something like that, and it's like
weird.
Oh, okay, they're both the same though, right? Like it's kind of weird.
That is weird.
Yeah. That was amazing. I like the One Piece manga, Burn the Heathen,
Why don't you just read the manga if you prefer reading? Because I like the pretty pictures too.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of like when people ask like, hey, you know, you talk about how you really like gameplay more than, you know, graphics, and how graphics aren't important and stuff. Why do you even care about the graphics? It's like, oh, you know, I do like them too. Like, I'm not inhuman. I also like pretty graphics and nice stuff, you know.
And that's not to say that the manga graphics or the manga illustrations are not beautiful as well, because I've also read a few of them, and I just generally prefer a more passive role in the way that I take in the story. And I've also, like I said, I've read a couple, specifically the Gantz manga. I've read like all 300 whatever issues of it. And I was reading them, like, nonstop. I was just going through them, click, like, every freaking second I was, like, going through a page of it. Because I really wanted to know what happened with the story, because the anime ended so abruptly, and there was so much more to the story beyond that. And I actually haven't revisited it in a long time, so there's probably, like, another 100 issues if they kept going. But it got pretty fucking crazy, so I don't know. Kind of worried about what they did with the story after a point, but it was also really good.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too, that I've noticed about animes is, like, I appreciate the fact that the fantastic universes are really, really out there, and, like, really weird, and they can design a whole universe around, like a super fantastical premise. But then what happens is, like, I get it at first, and it's like, okay, I could get behind, like, I can understand this for a while, and then they have to progress this story in this really weird thing, and it progresses in not necessarily an unrealistic way, but in a way that's sort of like it just gets weird. It just gets weird and hard to follow because they have to take it to a more exactly. They have to take it to like to a weirder place to progress the story, and then it just gets really...
It's the Dragon Ball Z effect. Like, everything that you freaking fight Frieza, and Frieza was crazy hard, and then all of a sudden Cell shows up, and then Buu shows up, and you're like, wait a minute, how fucking hard can they be? Where is the limit here?
Yeah. Also, I am gonna be. I don't know if I'm part of a group or anything because I don't really follow any people who like Dragon Ball Z or anything. But me personally, maybe I'm some sort of like purist or part of some group. But I feel that the show ended after Cell Saga, and that's it. Nothing else happened. The rest of the Buu Saga, GT, all that didn't even happen. Forget all of it. Forget it all. The show, if Akira Toriyama had stuck to his guns, it would have ended at Cell Saga. And let me explain. Do you want me to explain?
I get it. I mean, but you can explain, because I'm sure probably not everybody does.
Okay, so the first villain, or the first antagonist of Dragon Ball was the Red Ribbon Army, right? Like, so that's what Goku initially fought. Like, that's who he was fighting, is because he was fighting the Red Ribbon Army and the robots and then
wasn't there other stuff involved too before that even happened? But it's been such a long time.
Yeah, he was training and stuff, but his first like official antagonist villain was the Red Ribbon Army, basically. Like the first like full thing that he had to actually tackle, because the first part of the series he starts training and then he's walking to go find the Master Roshi and stuff, and he has to like learn how to, and he goes through a bunch of things. But the first like super villain was
there was a dude that kept chasing him around and trying to kill him. I remember he was trying to climb the Korin Tower, and the dude was trying to follow him up it, and he couldn't. And I can't remember who that guy was.
I don't really remember. I don't know. But I mean, the fact that you can't remember maybe tells you why you.
Well, he might have been part of the Red Ribbon Army. That's the thing. He probably was.
It could have been. Yeah, maybe. But basically, the first really big mountain that Goku had to tackle was the Red Ribbon Army, right? And he was always the protagonist in the show. Goku was always driving the action. It was always around him and stuff. And then he goes on. He fights a bunch of different people. All this stuff. And then he becomes super strong. Like, he's super duper strong. He's like the strongest fighter in the world, in the universe and stuff, even that they expand on. Like, he's super strong. And then he encounters Cell, and Cell is a holdover from the Red Ribbon Army. He didn't fully defeat them. His first adversary, he didn't fully beat them. And Cell is the last bastion of them, and Cell is the greatest foe that he has ever faced, right? Because he's strong. He is comprised of all Goku's greatest enemies and friends throughout the show. He has all their powers, and he knows how to fight them, and he knows how to like every move that you're gonna do. And then in the end, you learn that he's stronger than Goku, right? Like, the main protagonist of the show, he is stronger than Goku. The show has been focused on him the whole time. It is all about Goku, and he can't do it. He can't beat him. So what he does, he passes on the torch to his son to be the new defender of the Earth, right? And his son is able to defeat Cell and basically close up all of the storylines, all of the enemies that Goku's ever faced, his son defeats because they're all in Cell, and it's his first adversary as well in the Red Ribbon Army. And Goku dies, and he's supposed to not be able to come back, but, you know, that show has a lot of Deus Ex Machinas. Goku dies, and he's not supposed to be able to come back, and his son is stronger than him, and he will continue to be strong. And that's where the show should end, because it makes sense that it's all the villains, all in one, and Goku has a conclusion. That's the end. That's the end for Goku. He says, I want to explore the afterlife now. I'm dead. That's just what's going to happen. And it makes sense, too, because that's what he's been doing his whole life, is defending the Earth. He died defending the Earth, and he passed the torch on to his son. And that's it. And it's symbolically, poetically, it makes sense. It's a great conclusion. It's a great way to end the show. And that's how Akira Toriyama had intended it to be ended. But then they made all the other shit because they wanted more money. And it was, you know...
Really? I didn't get that impression. Like, I mean,
well,
I see it when you say it, but...
Yeah.
I got to that part, and yeah, it felt like, I guess, they wrapped it up, but then there was a part where it's like, okay, this is exciting, I want to learn more about the afterlife, and I want to meet all these new characters, and also there's, like, all these other characters that never got really fleshed out or developed because they just were made to be killed. So,
yeah.
I kind of wanted to hear more about it, and they kept going, although I agree that it ended certainly before GT, and probably at least 1 or 2 tiers before that, even.
Well, like people are saying, the manga actually ends after Cell Saga. Buu is never in the manga.
Right.
They only continued it because the anime was so popular. And so they you know, Akira Toriyama did write in the new Buu character and stuff, and then added in that whole series, and then added in GT afterwards and stuff like that.
The Say a Man thing was garbage, I agree. Those are just filler episodes, obviously.
Yeah. Well, not only that, like, the Cell Saga ends on a note where it's like, hey, Goku's dead forever, he's not coming back, and he doesn't want to come back if you want to figure out a way, because he probably could, because that's what happens in Buu, is that they do figure out a way. But, like, he can't come back, he doesn't want to come back, and Gohan's stronger than him. And he is the new defender of the Earth, he's carried on the torch. But then in the Buu Saga, it's like, oh, hey, Goku can actually come back again, and also Gohan has been slacking, and he's just into ladies, and he kind of sucks now. And it's like, it just completely retcons all of the stuff, all the great poetic stuff that you do at the end of the Cell Saga.
Well, but it does allow us to shift the emphasis back onto Goku, right? Because I think all of us kind of thought Gohan was kind of, like, not that cool comparatively.
Yeah, but that's the thing, it's supposed to end there. Or, like, poetically it makes sense to end there, because Gohan isn't that cool. But so you don't need to watch it. You don't need to see what happens to Gohan. I don't want to know. I don't want to know. He's cool at the end of Cell Saga. Like, he's cool. Like, that's it. Didn't
they even set up a thing where, like, Goku was going to join a tournament in the afterlife and fight the other warriors that had died? I thought I remember that happening.
That happens. Or is
that earlier?
I think that happens in between Cell Saga and Buu Saga. That might happen in between.
Yeah, it's really hard to keep the timeline straight because there's a lot of times where they're dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still like the whole series, though. I felt like it was a really fun journey, although many hours of it were kind of not necessary. But, you know, whatever. Overall, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and someone says, like, don't you like Buu at all? I do, kind of. Like,
I don't.
I watched it.
I kind of didn't like Buu. I thought he was really frustrating, because it's like, nothing you could do about this character it's like, it's all just artificially designed barriers to make him more difficult, to the point where he's just not a character, and he's just a freaking wall.
Yeah, that's the thing about the Buu Saga, and this is something that Cell Saga kind of fell into a little bit as well, but you know, it was supposed to end there, so
was horrific.
That's why.
He was a freaking scary character. Buu is just ridiculous.
Well, the thing about Buu Saga is that it fell, like, Dragon Ball Z has its own set of cliches that are unique to it, in that, like, hey, this guy got more power, no, this guy got more power, now this guy got more power, now this guy got more power, now this guy got more power, okay, that's the end. And that's sort of like, that's the kind of the cliche that a lot of the sagas get into, but it's muted more in, like, the Saiyan Saga, with, like, it sort of happens with Raditz, and then, you know, Vegeta and Nappa come, and it's just a fight, and that's the end. And then in Frieza Saga, it's sort of like that too, where Goku gets a little bit stronger, and, like, Piccolo gets incrementally stronger as well, and stuff like in Vegeta too, and, like, that sort of happens. It's getting a little bit more like that. Cell gets really into that cliche. But you still get to kind of follow along, and it's still fine. Frieza Saga is still my favorite, but then Buu Saga totally embraces that. Like, it is, every episode is like, this guy got more power, and then this guy got more power, and then this guy got more power, and then this guy, and it kind of feels forced. It was still fine. I watched it, you know.
Well, the thing that kind of threw me too is when we got to the point where we needed to introduce time travel. Like, when Trunks showed up, I was like, this is where they're going to jump the shark. And Trunks was a fine character, but then we went from time travel to fusions, and then we started dissolving characters we actually liked just for the sake of a way out of the plot that they wrote. And that kind of made me sad, because I'd much rather have them as individual people than a fused character for the sake of progressing the storyline that ultimately terminates in the good guys winning, because that's where those stories always go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, we just killed these characters for basically no reason. We could have found a more clever way to have to go down this path.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, like I said, I think Dragon Ball Z isn't a... It's not like an expertly crafted show. Mm-hmm. But the poetic meaning that it had, for me, sort of all coalesced in Cell Saga and made sense. And even if you weren't following sort of what was actually happening symbolically, or if there even was any, at the end of Cell Saga it was like, oh, it feels like there's a conclusion here.
Yeah.
and then it was just opened up again, and it kind of killed the whole thing for me. So
The android was before or after Cell? It was before, right? Because the android helped kill Cell.
yeah, it was Android 16, 17, and 18, and then
Right,
19
and I remember they got
were
eaten.
Jiro,
Yeah,
and,
that was
they
the
got
ultimate
murdered.
android. Okay, right.
Yeah, and then so
Thank you
That was-
again,
that
the
was
virus. I think you're maybe leaving, and thank you so much for all of the gifts that you sent. That's really, really awesome and generous of you. And we're probably going to play some Naruto at some point, thanks to your generous donation.
Night the virus. Have a good night. Yeah. So that's me on Dragon Ball Z. Still really like the show, but when I go back and watch it, I don't watch Buu Saga.
Okay. Yeah, he
Like,
just like
when I-
turned everyone into candy. It's like, come on.
Yeah, it's just like kind of. You know what it was? It's sort of what they did. It was starting along a path of what happened in GT, in that like it tried to return to a Dragon Ball like ridiculous comedic style,
Sure.
but like in Buu Saga they only kind of half-assed it, and then in GT they also kind of half-assed it, but went more fully in that direction, so much so that they made Goku a kid again to really reinforce the idea that, like, hey, this is more like Dragon Ball than it is like Dragon Ball Z. But then they also half-assed it because Goku became an adult to become fucking Red Ape Man, and, like,
Yeah.
I didn't even watch Dragon Ball GT.
Do you think a lot of the stuff about why Boo did all of the like turning people into candy was just so they could make it a less horrifying concept for the sake of TV? Like, so it didn't get censored that he's basically eating everyone in the world?
I think maybe, like, they were fine with killing millions of people before, though. Like,
Yeah, but
I
the
don't
way
think
they
was
showed it
necessarily
was
that.
always so dismissive, right? The way they
Yeah.
did violence in that show, which is bizarre because it's a show literally about violence. But
Yeah.
if it was anything graphic or
Well-
gory, it was always kind of glossed over in a way.
I don't know. Not with Cell. With Cell, that was fucked up. I don't know if you only watched the
Dude.
Funimation version. Did you
I
watch
don't know what I watched anymore, actually.
Okay, you probably only watched the Funimation version, but you should watch some of the scenes
Well,
that were
I don't
taken
know.
out
If
in
maybe
Funimation.
I've seen it. What
Okay.
happens that you're talking about?
So you know how they have Cell absorbing people with his tail and
Yeah, he
stuff?
fucking eats them and swallows them, and they're
Yeah.
like screaming, and it's horrifying.
Yeah, but they don't really show it in the Funimation version. In the Japanese version, they do, and like it's Cell like pierces his fucking needle dick tail into their backs while they're screaming on the ground, and then you see all
Yeah,
of their
he sucks
flesh
their stuff in.
sucked in through their bones, and their eyes deform and they get sucked in.
I
and
think
it's
I
like
saw that.
really horrifying. Yeah, like that's like really legitimately horrifying. So that one's not totally glazed over.
But there's the part where his tail opens up and he starts eating their whole bodies in one move.
yeah, well, that was just the android to consume them.
Oh.
Yeah. So Rob, Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z? I think like we said earlier, Dragon Ball is like objectively probably the better show, but I love Dragon Ball Z more. Just because I grew up on it.
I like them both. I think I like Dragon Ball a little bit more, but I enjoyed them both.
Yeah.
I think I remember that one more fondly, I guess, between the two. But I didn't
Yeah.
really grow up on either of them, I guess, because I was probably like 17 when I first watched it.
Yeah, I watched it when I was a little kid. So that's part of why
I caught parts of it on like a fucking afternoon Cartoon Network show that I can't remember the name of now, Toonami. And
Right.
eventually I started looking it up online, and I think I just watched the whole series online somewhere.
Yeah. It's I watched it all from Toonami when I was a kid.
It's Gantz, Gantz with a Z, Mr. Baconator, Gantz. I don't know, you said a second look, so actually you probably know that already and just misspelled it. But yeah, I definitely recommend that if you have no issues with violence or like really kind of dark humor or dark just stories in general, you should definitely see Gantz. It's 26 episodes, it's not super, super long. You could probably watch it in 2 or 3 days if you really want to, and you probably will get addicted to it on your very first episode, because the framing of the show is really well done, and it's so mysterious, like you have no idea what the hell's going to happen, and it just keeps escalating in a way that's really interesting and keeps you kind of guessing. And also, it's like really emotional at times too, and you won't expect it when it happens. You start to really like the characters out of nowhere. So, yeah, definitely watch Gantz.
Yeah. Yeah, like Dragon Ball, because Yamcha was cool then. He was. And then Katamari, that's funny. I didn't actually know that. What he said is that there was no Dragon Ball Z in Japan. It was all Dragon Ball, but the tone was so different between Z, or like the sagas in Z and Dragon Ball, that they changed the name for American
Oh, wow.
audiences.
I didn't know that either.
Which makes sense because the tone is like totally different. Like the last bit of Dragon Ball is kind of more towards the Dragon Ball Z tone kind of thing when Goku is fighting Piccolo at the World Karate Tournament or whatever it is, and that was like a little bit more Z-ish.
Mm-hmm.
But then once you get into Saiyan Saga, like the tone is like totally different, completely different. Yeah, there's a new movie. Is there? Huh.
Yeah, I was kind of scared to even like ask what's happened with that property in the last 10 years, because it sounds like it could go fucking nuts with it. If they still wanted to, they could be churning out garbage at this point.
I'm sure they are. I mean, you know what's crazy to think about too is like that show, and the show especially, but like even the manga is even older. It's like the early '80s. It's a really long-running, popular thing that actually isn't even running anymore. It's like they're still making video games about Dragon Ball Z and stuff, and people still fantasize about having Dragon Ball Z characters in fighting games and stuff. So it's pretty crazy that it's been as popular as it is for so long, despite not having been actually continued for that long. Like it ended, like GT ended in the early '90s.
No, I don't intend on watching GT. I think I saw the first 1 or 2 episodes, and like I don't like the fact there's like a gangster rap in the intro of this, so I'm just probably gonna not be into this.
The rap in the beginning is so telling of like this is
Americanized.
Forced. Yeah, like this we are forcing the shit out of this, and we are making it cool. So yeah. I actually, what's funny is I watched most of what I've actually watched of GT was the Japanese version, and I don't even mean the Japanese version that has like subtitles. Like I literally watched the Japanese version without subtitles on this like network that only played it at like 2 in the morning. And it was like international television or something on channel like 682 or some shit like that. Mm-hmm. And I watched some of the GT, and it was all ridiculous, despite me not actually being able to understand what they're saying as well. Yeah, I don't know. That's my whole thing on anime and stuff.
That's the whole thing.
I don't know. Yeah, that's the whole thing for me. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I'll explore more in the future, but I mostly have a negative opinion about it, for the most part.
Really negative?
Yeah, for the most part. Like I mean, I mostly just don't watch it. You know, like if I see an anime or like whatever or something that looks like okay, maybe this premise is intriguing, I'll probably immediately be like, it's probably not good, and I won't watch it.
I kind of last asked a good question if we've watched Neon Genesis Evangelion, and that's actually a really telling one for what you're bringing up, because I have watched the whole thing. Have you?
No, I've heard of it, I think.
That's like the divider that a lot of people, it's like the trial by fire of like, can you stand the most pretentious anime that exists?
Oh, really?
Maybe that's a little exaggeratory, but it's one of those things that's like, it builds up to be so epic, and then they just fucking drop you off a cliff at the end.
Oh, really?
It's such a missed opportunity for great storytelling, and it so bothers me. And everybody who says you gotta watch the movie afterward, I watched the movie, I still kind of didn't care. There's actually a couple of movies, I think, if I remember correctly, but I did watch the whole thing, yes. It's real weird. It's very cerebral. The story's basically like children pilots of giant mechs have to fight monster demon aliens that show up on Earth. It's kind of your kaiju story, I guess. And they have to be in sync with each other to be able to handle this incoming threat, and the aliens get more and more crazy and more insane, and I guess you could say it's sort of like a Godzilla idea, except with more like ethereal demons. That then they kind of toy with the idea that maybe there's some sort of like biblical influence in it, and then it gets really out there at the end, and then just, no, never mind.
Yeah.
I would love to hear your opinion on it, just for the sake of like the fact that you have such background on storytelling, to know what you think they did wrong at the end, because it's a particularly epic fail, as much as I hate to say those words together.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing too. Is that the other thing about anime is it's traditionally difficult for me to consume because they don't follow they don't always follow like the strict Western ideals of story structure, and for me, that's a little bit hard to grasp without
Right.
being like, this is bad.
I actually
While,
find it refreshing a lot of the time, but then
no,
if they
yeah,
screw it
and
up, then
that's
I'm like, all right, screw that idea.
yeah, no, and it's totally fair, and it's totally fair, and I know that I'm saying that I'm actually wrong there when I say that. There's just an actual like a cultural dissonance, right? There's just a
Hmm.
difference there. Like it's something that I just don't understand, but it's hard for me to separate that from what I know, and what I know is actually good story structure and good progression and character development and stuff like that. And sometimes they kind of throw it out the window, and I know that that's like just a cultural thing in anime and stuff, and it kind of kills it for me sometimes, and it's hard for me to break in to it.
Yeah. I got over the
Uh,
hump, I guess, so now I'm not fazed by it as much. It's just sometimes the stories just really drop off in weird ways.
yeah, Rob has seen this Japanese love death metal and rap. The shows were in westernized. The
Hmm.
Japanese are.
We haven't even talked
Hmm.
about Bleach this whole time, which is also kind of a thing.
No, I wasn't even saying that. I wasn't even saying that it was for an American audience with GT. I was saying like that shows immediately that like, hey, we're trying to be cool and hip and new, you know.
Hmm.
It's like if you guys ever saw Star Trek Enterprise, which is the last Star Trek show that was on television. So like the original series has just like this weird sci-fi, really low budget orchestra sound quality to their intro that is just kind of weird and out there and doesn't really sound good until you hear it a lot of times and realize its iconic nature. But then you see like Star Trek Enterprise, and it's like this guy on an acoustic guitar. And he's like, "It's been a long road getting from there to here," and they're showing like American flags and like rockets flying and NASA and all this stuff. And it's just
Yeah.
like, and that is so telling of the rest of the show about like, hey. We're trying to let you know that this isn't your grandmama's Star Trek. This is
Hmm.
one that you can get into
And
because
how?
you are hip and you are now and you understand the world. And that's sort of like what I mean with like the GT intro, where it's just kind of like, okay, yeah, you're trying. I get it. You're trying to differentiate it from Dragon Ball and stuff and Dragon Ball Z, but don't, because it's like iconic and really popular. Like, it's a bad idea. Why would you do that? That's like a Halo being like, hey, we're gonna make a new Halo game, and it's gonna be totally passive run, and it's Master Chief in training, or like when he'd had a desk job, or like something that's more
Right.
like Master Chief goes skateboarding, because like that's what's
Oh,
hip
that
right
could be
now.
cool.
Yeah, I'd actually play that.
I'd probably be
So
into that.
I'm wrong. I'm a bad analogy maker, but still, yeah.
Don't you think that maybe, and maybe I'm off base on this, but like we kind of want to embrace the idea of this being not a Western production,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like we kind of want to get into the alternate culture stuff because that's exciting and it's different and maybe a little mysterious because we're so trained to believe that stories are always told in the exact same way, and maybe there's a new perspective here. So if you try to appeal to us, that's kind of like a letdown right from the start because I don't want to be appealed to in that way. I've already seen all of that garbage and I kind of don't think it's great.
Dude, I'd so play Master Chief skateboarding. Okay, I totally would too. That would be actually
I
really
know,
fun.
it's a bad
Yeah.
analogy.
Yeah, it's a bad analogy, but yeah. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I just it's difficult. Like, I'm not saying that all anime is bad, and I'm not saying that I hate all of it, and I'm not saying that like, people who like it don't know what they're talking about or anything like that. There is just a different thing, and I'm
Right.
just not into it. I'm just not into it personally. It's too close to like. Generally, the cliches feel like it's too close to like a soap opera versus a drama to me a lot of the time.
I just want to
And it
believe
kinda,
that if you can like Star Trek, that you could also like anime because it's got such creative storytelling so often.
I think like I said, there are some that I like Cowboy Bebop is
Yeah.
a really good show. It's really really good. They do a
But
very
how do
good
you
job.
get into the new ones if you don't want to watch them because you said you don't want to see any of them?
Well, I mean, I did watch Attack on Titan, and that's as new as it gets, right?
Sure.
And I watched that, and it was fine. It was ish, but then again, they kind of doubled back on all the things that I really dislike about anime, and it took me out of it, as it has with almost everyone that I've watched. So it's hard. Like even the newest stuff, where like maybe I'm trying to embrace a new thing that I like, kind of just takes me out of it again. So,
have you watched any of the Studio Ghibli stuff?
Oh yeah, that's fucking great. That's like different though. That's like that's not even really anime. That's like Studio Ghibli. That's like Miyazaki.
Okay, fair enough. I was just gonna say, like, if you for some reason use some of the bias from the shows, like, you definitely should have.
No.
I was just gonna tell you had to watch those at least.
Oh yeah, no.
Spirited Away is probably one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, I don't even consider that like in the same vein, because it doesn't. Like, actually, I guess some of the things kind of hit on some traditional anime cliches, but then they handle it in a less melodramatic and more realistic fashion, which is why I like it. But not only that, I mean, the art is just so fucking impressive.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Like, they've like painted every fucking frame. It looks, it's like Disney. It's Japanese Disney, and it's great.
Oh, I think it's so much better than Disney. I think it's so beautiful.
Oh, I wouldn't go so far as to say it's better.
I would. I would say it's way better than Disney, but that's just my personal feeling.
Right, yeah. I mean, that's I think that's fair, but yeah, I personally, I wouldn't say it's better than Disney. I'd say they're probably roughly equivalent. But yeah.
I've never been moved the way that I have from any of the Miyazaki movies, the way that, like, Disney movies would. Wait, I said that backwards. Disney movies have never moved me the way that Miyazaki movies have.
Yeah. That's fair. Oh, and yeah, someone says Akira. Okay, that's another anime that I actually really love. Akira's really good. Akira is fucking great.
I have a funny opinion on Akira, because I like it, but I don't like it because I think it's a good movie. I just like it because of the cultural significance more so. Also, it's just interesting to watch, but I feel like there's not much of a message or a story to it.
Yeah, it's a little bit muddled. I haven't really fully analyzed it. I like it because it's real pretty. And there are interesting situations that go on, and it's sort of, I guess if I had to sit back and think about it, it's more about, I don't know. I guess it's just.
I have no
it's
idea.
Just sort of,
I love chat right now. That's great.
It's the it's kind of, it is a moral dilemma a lot of the time with
It's like really superficial, isn't it?
It is a superficial moral dilemma, yes, and it's a forced one too. But it's
dude falls from grace, dude joins motorcycle gang, dude gets psychic powers, dude kills his friend, like... I mean, that's not actually most of the plot points, but like it sort of follows a similar streak to that, and it's just not that interesting.
Yeah. What's cool is it has that sort of a mystery about it, which I'm told in the manga is totally expanded upon, and there's no mystery at all about what happens. but in the movie, it's like totally mysterious about who Akira was and what's happening, and it's exciting exploring what this new world is and why it's this way, and it's sort of, the mystery sort of explains the inherent like deep violence of the characters that yet are still relatable, even though they're basically like Clockwork Orange-esque characters.
That's actually a pretty good analog, sure.
Yeah. So and then it's cool exploring the world, and then it gets kind of weird. It's almost got like a From Dusk Till Dawn type of like.
Yeah, there is just a big delineation, isn't there, in the way that story goes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it just gets like really weird really fast. Like it's slowly, progressively like, okay, that's a lot weirder than the rest of the stuff that's happening, and then it's like, okay, that's still a lot weirder, but it kind of fits. And then it's the end part, and it's like, okay, I don't know how this just happened. Like that's
the weird part is the only part of the movie that really grabs my attention. The rest of it seems very cliche and boring.
Yeah,
and it just felt like a lead up to the weird part, which I appreciate. That's fine. You gotta have your pacing to your story, but it's like, can we have it be a little bit more involving? By the time we get to the weird part.
Yeah. yeah. I mean, yeah, it's fair. I still really like it. The animation quality's fantastic.
Oh, it's a
And
beautiful
got a
movie.
lot
I
of
don't debate that.
iconic
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, and like especially like that the I mean I think I'm sure the most famous scene when the motorcycles with the war drums playing and the really awesome animation and the lights trailing behind them is like, okay, that's sweet. Like that's very well made. I can appreciate the quality of this, and then it's a good hook because that's what that is. It's a hook, and it was good. It was good. They hooked me. They did it. It was a successful hook, and it got me watching the rest of the film, and I liked it. So, yeah.
There's also something about it that seems like it feels like an art piece. Like, they knew when they were making it that people would use this as a reference point for a lot of things, so I don't know how exactly that comes through, but when I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, they clearly designed this to be appealing to people who don't know a ton about anime, and I don't even know where I get that reference from. It just feels that way.
Well, I think if you would levy that criticism against it, you could probably also levy that criticism against Cowboy Bebop, because it's like a... What I really like about Cowboy Bebop is the world is so interesting in that it's actually kind of similar to me to like Firefly, where it's like, hey, this is the semi-distant, like it's kind of the distant future because you wouldn't call it a near future story, but it's not like super distant, and it's kind of like how it probably will look in the future. Like, that's probably what the world's gonna be like, or it could be. Like, it's highly possible that it could be just like that. And then you pop in some characters, you put in some moral dilemmas, and you make them flawed, and it's interesting. You know? Oh, that's the other thing, too. Like, that's the other thing with anime in general, and this is sort of like, it goes with the cliche. Like, you look at somebody like Goku, right? He's like a paragon of virtue. Right? He's not flawed at all. And that usually doesn't make for a very interesting character. You know?
Right.
Like, you all, like, generally, like Game of Thrones is a great show for flawed characters. Like, if you want to know how to make character flaws, if, like, you're a writer, then go read A Song of Ice and Fire or watch a Game of Thrones. Because every character that dies in that show poetically deserves to die for one reason or another, besides the like characters that just die secondarily who are not influencing the story or in any way. But they are all flawed in some way that ends up being a fatal flaw. Despite how much you may like them or relate to them, they are flawed characters, and that makes them more interesting to you.
But Goku's the straight man, and the world is the messing with him type of thing. Like, it's just, he's the one that's going to provide the stability, and everything else is trying to change that stability. And they're saying in chat, like, that he is flawed and he's dumb as a box of rocks. Yeah, but it's mostly just because of his innocence.
Yeah, but
like, he's the embodiment of childlike wonder, basically.
Yeah. But even if you would say that him being dumb is flawed, one, I wouldn't say that that's true.
Yeah, I don't think it's true.
Because like he only appears to be dumb a lot of the time, but then there's several moments in the show. Like, here's a good example. In one of the episodes where Goku is fighting Frieza, I think, they explain that when he's fighting with him, Goku is shit talking with Frieza, and Frieza's shit talking him, and then Frieza's like, I could beat you with one hand or whatever, and he's like, okay, but just fight me on the ground, and like he's like, no flying, and like, okay, and then like Piccolo explains to Gohan oh, he's doing that because he could tell that Frieza's better in the air than he is, so he wants to, so like he has depth to his thinking and strategy, so he's not really dumb. He may appear dumb, but he's not. And then, even if you would contend that that is his flaw, that he's dumb, in no way, in any point of the series, is he ever challenged by that flaw, right? Like, him being dumb is never anything, like, there is never a point where he has to be challenged by that fact. So, if it is a flaw, then it's a poorly constructed one.
I don't think it's
because
a flaw.
It doesn't
it's just not.
It's just not a flaw, but I was saying, even if it is, there's no way that they pointed to it. Whereas you could see something like, I'm not going to spoil Game of Thrones, but like the first, one of the characters in Game of Thrones dies, okay?
Wow.
one of the characters in Game of Thrones
Fuck
dies.
me.
And he or she seems super good and like a paragon of virtue.
You should.
But pride
stop.
is what. Yeah. But like, well, I mean, like, there are a lot of characters like that.
I know, but you should just stop, because I don't want to end up talking about Game of Thrones to people. They're going to be pissed.
Yeah. Okay. But basically, he has a flaw. The character has a flaw, and that flaw itself kills him or her.
Or
just
it.
like a lot of the other characters, or it. Yeah. That flaw is what leads to their demise. He or she is challenged by it and loses because that's their flaw, and they couldn't overcome
I just don't think that Goku is dumb. I think
I also don't think he's dumb.
I think he's humble, and I think he's incredibly reserved, and he's patient, and he uses it strategically.
Yeah, totally. I agree.
Every time he's ever been in a situation where it tests his patience, he's never backed down, and he's never blown his rage on people in a way that makes him seem like the uncool one, like he's out of control.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most cool things about him, is like, you think he's dumb, but he always comes through in the end.
Yeah. But to my earlier point, why I even mentioned this, is that he is sort of a flawless character, in that, like, he's basically, in the show, he's like almost functionally like a god, like a deity character. He's deified in a lot of ways. And a lot of the criticisms that you would levy against the character like Superman, where he's too powerful and he's right all the time and he's really nothing wrong with him. He's a Boy Scout. They call him the Big Blue Boy Scout in the comics to make fun of him. Mm-hmm. He's a flawless character, and that makes him kind of boring. And in the same way, Goku kind of fits into that mold too. And that's sort of something that happens in a lot of anime shows for me when I watch, is that they have these characters that are kind of paragons of whatever, and then they don't really have a flaw, and then it's less than realistic.
His one flaw, if anything, is that he's incredibly narcissistic, but not in the usual way.
Yeah.
The whole world does actually revolve around him, and he knows it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So it's like, he has a right to be, but it doesn't mean that it's not still something of a flaw. Like, everything's always about Goku. And he doesn't, he doesn't be a dick about it or anything, but it really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. They kind of went into it a little bit in that, in the Frieza Saga, they kind of did, like an actual flaw of the character was that his Saiyan blood made him naturally arrogant.
Right.
And and he was kind of challenged on that, because, like, especially after a wound, you get stronger as a Saiyan, right? That they really only explored in the Frieza Saga and then completely abandoned the idea later on. But like, if you take a mortal wound, you become stronger and stuff like that, and and then like when Goku became a Super Saiyan for the first time, his character kind of changed, like, entirely, which they kind of again abandoned right after the Frieza Saga. That Goku becomes more of a dick when he's a Super Saiyan.
Right, because that would ruin his whole character then. Yeah,
right. But yeah, I would love to see if they actually explored that kind of idea, that he does kind of become this, like, pompous dickbag when because that's what he does.
I don't want that. That would be awful.
Yeah, but again, like, it would kind of add a little bit more depth to what is functionally a pretty fucking depthless character.
Hi, Zen.
And
I didn't actually mind it. I actually
I don't either.
Would have been sad if they wrecked his character that way.
I love Goku too, and I love all that stuff, but at the same time, I can still analyze why Goku wouldn't work in Game of Thrones, basically.
Fuck yeah, I know why. Yeah, obviously I know why he wouldn't work in Game of Thrones, but I'm not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But no, I think his flaw, if anything, is that he often neglects the people that actually care about him to serve the people who don't.
Yeah.
Right? Like, his wife? Like, he's always leaving her, and she's always like, why won't you just stay with me in the house for, like, one day? He's like, because the fucking world's falling apart, and I'm the only one that can save it.
Yeah.
And then she's like, well, fuck, I can't argue with that logic.
Yeah. But at the same time, like, they only very minorly go into that, and he's never really challenged on it.
Because they don't want to make him out to be a dick.
Right. But for that reason, his character itself is not the, like, pressing him on his, like, morality is not a focus of the show. And sometimes that can be, and then it ends up being like just a show about fighting, which is what it is. It totally is. It's a show about fighting and Goku being stronger, and that's fine. And that's
Nova
that's
Pain
what it
brings up
is.
a great point that Vegeta is actually the alternate reality version of Goku with depth.
Yeah, he totally has.
He's
depth,
the
and
mirror
he's
image
totally
of
flawed.
Goku for the flaws. He's the one that's more flaws.
Yeah,
than
yeah,
good.
he totally is. He's totally, yeah. See, that's actually why I love Vegeta. Actually,
That's
Vegeta's
a great
one of my
idea.
favorite
That's such a
characters.
great story. Like the fact
Yeah.
that he's basically also Goku but with flaws, and they both get to exist in the same reality fighting each other.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of true. I mean, he is sort of the foil to
That's
Goku.
so meta.
Yeah, I mean, well, he is presented sort of as the foil to Goku, and that's the whole idea with him too. And that's also why I think Vegeta is one of my favorite characters, is because he is flawed and he's challenged on those flaws
Right.
constantly, always, all the time, until eventually he actually has to be a round character and evolve and then realize what's actually important to him, being his family and stuff, and actually realizing that he cares about people as much as that hurts him inside because he's been raised to be so callous. And that that's like the way I described him. That sounds interesting, right? Like he sounds
Right.
like an interesting character that you'd like to explore. Whereas Goku's like, yeah, he's really good, and he's good at everything he does, and he's really strong, and he's the best, and he's the protagonist too, and he's always gonna win. And that's also why I really like Cell Saga too, because it kind of abandons the idea that Goku always wins, because he doesn't in the end. This is the first time Goku loses, like actually loses. He can't win. He knows he can't win. He loses, and he decides that the best way to deal with this is like, I'm done. I've lost, and there's someone better, and that means that someone better will take my place.
Mm-hmm. What did you think about the characterization when Vegeta actually became not an awful person? Like, they gave him a pink shirt and he settled down and took a wife
Yeah.
and, like...
Well, again, that happened in, like, Buu Saga, basically.
Right.
Oh, no, you mean... Yeah. That
was at
mostly
the
happened
end.
in Buu Saga, that's, again, another one of the reasons why I don't like Buu Saga, is they kind of killed a lot of the things.
Well,
and
I agree, but, like, at the same time, it is interesting to see the other side of that coin, given that he's always been so adversarial throughout the whole series. To be able to see the character in a different framework is kind of neat.
Yeah. But, I mean, that part about him is what makes the character interesting, and when you take that away, it kind of makes him less
Well, but it's
interesting.
the demonistic version of your Walter White, right? Like, the reason you like
Yeah.
him is because he evolves, and everybody's got two sides to their story, so does Vegeta.
Right. But the thing is, it never leads to anything with Vegeta.
Yeah, it absolutely doesn't lead to anything. That is true.
And that's the thing. Like with Walter White, every time he changes, something monumental and horrifying happens until inevitably, and I won't spoil anything, but like until inevitably, his changes consume him completely. And that is part of the whole thing, is that that when the characters do change, it's not only difficult, they're not only flawed, and trying to challenge them on that and trying to make them change completely affects the story. So much like a good example is Shakespeare did this really well, in that when something really bad happened to characters, he would always make it so that the world reacts. Like when Macbeth kills that dude, a storm suddenly starts. And it's like, yeah, the world is reacting. Some shit just went down, and this is completely changing everything right now. Whereas when Vegeta changes in, like, Buu Saga, it's like, yeah, this happened, like, over the course of 15 years that we didn't get to watch, and it's not really important to the story. He's still kind of Vegeta, and still kind
I
of
love
not.
how he was like, they can't just let the character change, they have to be like, he's still angry and pissed off all the time, even though he's totally got nothing to be upset about now.
Yeah.
You just gotta be in a grumbly voice and angry to everyone and still call him Kakarot and like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Get over it, man. Shit's
Yeah,
over.
exactly. Yeah.
You get laid now, just like calm down.
Yeah. Vegeta got a complete arc, which is why everyone secretly relates to him, but he gets no love. Yeah, that's true. He is. He's totally a round character, whereas Goku is a completely flat character, which is weird. And again, this is why I'm talking about like how sometimes Japanese shows kind of abandon like traditional story structures. Generally speaking, it's not that way, where the protagonist is flat and some secondary character is round. And that's kind of what happens in Dragon Ball Z.
What
where
about
Vegeta
Piccolo?
is.
Piccolo's
Yeah,
pretty damn
Piccolo's the same
round
way.
too.
Yeah, him totally. But with him, it's less so because he evolves as a person. I mean, it is because of that whole thing. Yeah, it's obligation, it's reluctant heroism, which I really like, and that's why I also really like Piccolo's, because he's a reluctant hero character, until he finally totally adapts to being just a regular hero and not a reluctant hero anymore, and then he gets kind of boring. And then at the same time, while he's getting boring, he kind of gets phased out of the show as an important character.
Well, he got, like, assimilated, if I remember correctly. Like, he just became another character.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. But yeah, like especially with Piccolo too, because like he was King Piccolo, and then King Piccolo dies and makes an egg, and then that's regular Piccolo, and then he kind of evolves a little bit, and yeah.
Man, there's such a linear path to so many of these characters. They became so many different people.
Yeah, that's a long-running show. Yeah. Hey, that's also a criticism totally levied against Star Trek and stuff. Is like all the characters are flat in all of the shows. They're always flat. They don't evolve. They don't really change as people. Voyager tried to do it, and they totally failed.
The stories are self-contained, I thought, right? Each episode is its own story, so they have to be flat.
Exactly, yeah.
By definition.
And that is sort of one of the problems with the Monster of the Week style of narrative, but it's still interesting in its own kind of ways. That's why I thought the original series is better, is because, okay, you don't really have character development actually happening. You more have character exploration than you have character development in a Monster of the Week style of things. So what you do is really embrace the Monster of the Week and just talk about interesting subjects so that you put the characters in these weird situations so that you could relate to them. Whereas Star Trek Next Generation kind of made the characters, like, they kind of tried to conflict their morality and tried to kind of make them do different things and stuff, and but then didn't really talk about anything philosophical, and then, like, sometimes it's just kind of about, like, you know, like, hey, this is kind of cool, and this is kind of science fiction-y and stuff, and, you know.
I like when they do both. When they can do both a round and a flat character and make the stories both self-contained and also fit into an arc.
Yeah, Doctor Who does that pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doctor Who does something like that, so. I think it's best to Star Trek Stars, yeah.
Watch Doctor Who if you don't. It's good stories.
Yeah. Yeah. But Nick, really need to turn on my AC because I'm sweating.
I need to eat food because I'm about to pass out. I haven't eaten since early in this afternoon, so I've just been hanging on because I really enjoyed this conversation. But
yeah, me too. It was fun.
Maybe time to wrap things up at this point.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So thank you everybody for sticking around. It's amazing. Almost 300 people are still watching us talk about random anime bullshit and Star Trek. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. It was a good time. I would love to do something like this again and have like some sort of framework to it that's not just us chatting, maybe, so there'd be another reason to watch, because I've just had my damn camera on since I finished my Phil Fish drawing. But you know, even if that's not the case, and like 10 more people just showed up as soon as we said that. But yeah, it's go check out Alpaca Patrol, twitch.tv/Alpaca Patrol. Go subscribe to him, get your beat stick, and stalk them into the night. Who do we stalk? The llamas and the loiterers.
And the loiterers, yeah. People can't.
They need to get beat the fuck down, those llamas and loiterers.
Yeah, they definitely do.
And if you don't have your badge and your beat stick, like, I don't know how you're gonna do it, so